Hello everyone, the library is open once again. I'm the tourist.
And I'm the nerd.
So welcome back. Today's episode is a one-topic discussion. We've decided we're gonna review Wuthering Heights by Emily Brontë.
Being someone who's just recently read it, and you being someone who placed it in your top 10, I think
Yeah.
it's going to be interesting.
An interesting discussion, at least we hope.
Yeah. So I would just like to mention that I gave it, I think, 8 out of 10. I have 1 to 10 rating system.
Yeah.
So it's not my top 10 favorite book that I've ever read, but it is good. It is good.
I think I rated it, if I remember correctly, on Goodreads under 4 stars once I rated it, but I did read it soon after I read Jane Eyre.
Okay.
And Jane Eyre is just the standard for me, so I think I compared it too much to that.
Okay.
So like now, after everything I've read, I would probably still give it 5 stars, to be honest. So it's a 5-star read for me.
Yeah, I think when I did my Goodreads review, I gave it 4 out of 5. I just prefer 1 to 10 because sometimes my 4-star, this book is not as good as 4 stars that book. So
Oh yeah, I've struggled with that a lot, especially recently since I have my Instagram book account, because I've decided on this rating from 1 to 5, and now I've ended up, giving books a 3.5 instead, or, a 6 out of 5 if it's really good, which is coming up. I feel like I just read a book that blew my entire life into pieces. It was so good. But more on that later, or not here.
So this is our not so short but short introduction into today's video, or today's episode. So
Oh yeah, just a disclaimer. I have severe allergies right now. So if I sound a little more stuffy today, or if you hear me sniffling, it is not the dreaded thing that's going around right now. It is hay fever, okay? Just a disclaimer.
So
let's go. Okay, so the first thing I want to mention is kind of like, should we go through the plot first?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it would be best, but I'm gonna leave it to you because I am really, really bad at summarizing plots.
I'm really bad at remembering what happened first and what happened second. So, this is going to be a joint effort. I've decided right now because otherwise... Okay, so basically, this was written by Emily Brontë, and the reason I mention this now is because she led a very reclusive life. She was born into a family of 6 children, and family life is basically all she knew. And this book really encapsulates, family life of, richer families as they were in the 1800s. She wrote about what she knew, and she wrote about it so expertly that, you really do realize that these people that she wrote about could have been real people because she knew them so well. She knew her characters so well. And it's very clear that she, based them on the family life that she led, right? So that's the first thing I'm gonna say.
This is actually, I have it in my notes, one of my plus points when it came to this book. Because every single character, despite it being, 19th century, could have been my next door neighbor now. They're so normal, so real. It's insane.
Yeah, it is insane. I mean, they do have these how should I say it, strange characteristics that make them either good or bad people. They're neither, really. They all
are just people.
Yes, they're all people, and the thing is, these characteristics are so normal that, of course, if you have a neighbor and you're gonna greet them, they're gonna seem like a completely normal person to you. But behind closed doors, you have no idea what kind of weird shit goes down. And that's exactly what's happening in Wuthering Heights. I feel like you don't actually know your neighbor, and these people are so real with their stupid sort of petty fights, with their strange like grudges that they hold over each other's heads. It's just very strange, but so realistic.
And it's weird because I read on Goodreads so many people complaining how the characters were so unlikable. That's the point. That's the point.
Yes. I have to say here, I loved and hated all of the characters almost just the same. Like, if we go to the main characters, which were, I guess, Heathcliff, Catherine, and Edgar.
Yeah. Catherine Senior, Catherine Junior.
Yes. Okay, let's make the distinction of Catherine Senior, Catherine Junior, yes. That's a thing I'm gonna mention later, but let's move on now. Catherine Senior, I really loved her. At points, I was like, yes, she is the perfect child. She is the perfect person. I am also in love with her. I completely understand Heathcliff. But at other points, she was being such a little brat. Oh my god, yeah. She was so mean, she was so rude, she was just the worst. And you can't love or hate completely a character in this book. You have to both love and hate them, as you do with, you know, your own sister or your own brother or something. Like, you love them to bits, but sometimes they just get on your fucking nerves. And that's exactly what the characters in this book are. So the fact that people were complaining about that fact, I think they just do not see the talent of the writing that Emily did in these characters when she created them.
Because we're so used to characters, especially main characters, being so perfect.
So perfect.
And that's a novelty when you pick up this book for the first time. Everyone is gonna annoy you, but you're gonna love them as well. Except I wasn't such a big fan of Cathy Senior. I just thought that she was too manipulative when it came to her relationship. It's something that transferred on to her daughter, but she had another problem, and that was Linton. But I'm going to get into that later. I just didn't like Cathy Senior being so horrible to the two men, because at the same time she's promising Edgar she's going to marry him, but at the same time saying Heathcliff is her soulmate, and then insulting him, Heathcliff, by accident. It just, girl, please.
Oh yeah, she was a mess. Okay, so let's establish that. Let's go through the plot. So the story basically starts with this, oh god, I forgot his name. Lockwood, right. This gentleman, Lockwood, coming to, was it the Grange?
Yeah, he was renting the Grange.
So the Grange is a manor that is approximately the neighbor of the manor of Wuthering Heights. They're the closest to houses, like they're closest to each other, right? I think.
Yeah, and then nothing that's remotely close.
Yeah, for a while. And Wuthering Heights itself is kind of situated on this, on top of this hill, so it's kind of hidden away even from the Grange. So Lockwood comes to the Grange because he is renting it from Heathcliff, who is one of the main characters here. And he notices sort of strange things with his landlord. He's, you know, a weird guy. I think...
Rude guy.
Rude guy. I think at one point he goes to Wuthering Heights and sees Catherine Jr. there.
Yeah.
And, you know, sees the sort of tension that's between them. So back at the Grange, he asks his maid. Is she his maid? I'm not sure anymore.
Nellie is his maid at that point.
At that point, but she was at one point a maid at Wuthering Heights.
Both Cathy's.
Yes.
Yeah.
So she kind of knows what's going on, because obviously who knows everything? It's the maids, right?
Yeah.
And they'll know everything. So Lockwood asks Nellie to tell him the story of Catherine, of Heathcliff, of Wuthering Heights. So she begins, and basically the story goes that in the beginning there were Catherine Sr., her brother...
Yeah.
God, what's his name? Something starting with H. Hindley?
Hindley.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's Catherine Sr., Hindley, her brother, and then their parents. I don't remember quite where their father goes, but he does go on a trip and comes back with an orphan boy. Now, this orphan boy is Heathcliff. He doesn't have a name at the start, I believe.
Yeah, Cathy's father actually gives him name and last name, both Heathcliff.
Yeah, right. Okay, yeah. The father brings home Heathcliff, who is so different. You know, he has dark hair and dark skin. You know, his complexion is different. His mannerisms are different because he, you know, is not used to the kind of life. Hindley, is it Hindley?
Oh my god.
Okay, I think it's Hindley. Okay, Hindley and Catherine start out sort of mean to him, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like bullying him or like excluding him from things. They don't accept him as their brother, which their father decided he is. He said, this is your brother now, you know, and I think that's, okay, first note, I think that's kind of insane. If my boyfriend brought home a child without telling me, I was like, this is our son now, I would kick him out. I keep the child.
Oh my god.
But I would kick him out. Holy shit. You can't just bring an entire child home. Like, here he is. You know?
Yeah. My boyfriend would 100% do that. I could just see him. But I would kick him and the child out.
Holy shit.
Okay. Jokes aside,
I kind of understand here Catherine and Hindley's perspectives of, you know, being wary of someone who is different, of someone who is new, because they are children. And, you know, they don't know any better. And over time, at least Catherine warmed up to Heathcliff significantly.
Yeah, they have a strong bond.
Yes, she on multiple occasions referred to him as her soulmate, I think. She really, really loved him. I think the love was real, but I think conventions held her back. And this is where we like move on with the story. I think it was Hindley and Catherine that went to the Grange? Or was it Heathcliff?
Heathcliff and Catherine went to the Grange, and that's when they got attacked by dogs. And the family at the Grange, so the Lintons, were kind enough to accept Cathy, but weren't as kind to Heathcliff, and that's where Cathy meets Edgar and Isabella Linton.
Yes. They're all kids at that point. So Cathy stays there for, I don't know how long, 5 weeks or something like that. A really long time, I believe. But of course they were, you know, like this book, for when it was written, raises some very good questions about, you know, like racism.
I have this line that I mentioned in the review about and this, if I may just start with Heathcliff at this point. I think I did hate him by the end. I did. But at the same time, he was a child of circumstance. I think I'm not gonna excuse his behavior. I'm not gonna justify it by no means. But he at some point says this, and I quote, "I wish I had light hair and fair skin and was dressed and behaved as well and had a chance of being as rich as he will be." And I think that was the moment when I said, okay, there's no excuses, there's no justification, but I see why you did what you did.
That's just it. It's an explanation but not an excuse.
Yeah.
You know, his troubled childhood, from the very start, he suffered a lot, and by the end of the book he was a horrible person, and that has, you know, a little bit to do with his skin, but not in the way that we would think. It's not because he was a traveler boy that he is a mean person. It was the fact that he was never accepted.
Exactly.
Anywhere.
Yeah. That's what made him decide, despite being all that you don't accept in your society, will rise.
Yeah.
I will rise and prove all of you wrong.
Yeah, that was his entire motivation, and though by the end he was a character that no one liked, he truly did sort of, you know, accomplish in his own life what he thought was the best he could accomplish. Which is, at the end of the story, you know, before he died, he was owner of both Wuthering Heights and the Grange. And he was, you know, landlord, he was master to everyone there. He just had power over everyone. Not a good thing.
Of course not.
But a logical thing.
Yes, you can see, like, you don't like him. You don't excuse his behavior. But you see, this man was so misused at some point that he did all that he did because of that.
No, yeah, his story makes kind of the most sense in the entire book. He has kind of a villain arc here, right? But it's a good one. It's so well done. You know, he really tried to be kind at some point. He was truly kind to Catherine at moments.
Nelly,
to Catherine Senior.
Especially Nelly.
Yeah.
I loved their relationship until that pivotal point.
And, you know, it truly, like, broke my heart. His character broke my heart because he was very well-rounded as a character, and you saw clearly where all his motivation for his bad deeds came from. And in the end, although you dislike him to your core, he's still a character that's very dear to my heart.
And he's the type of villain that I like personally. Not just black and white, but nuance, motivation. I mean, sometimes it's fun to read about villains who are evil for the sake of being evil. But in his case, I loved it. I loved his character, even though I didn't like his character.
Yeah, that's just it. You have this weird sort of soft spot for his character, although he is absolutely the worst.
So the pivotal moment that we mentioned came after a few years after Kathy met the Lintons because she decided to marry Edgar Linton, and that's what broke Heathcliff. And her words when she said something about him, but he didn't hear how she said he was her soulmate. He just heard her saying a bunch of bad stuff about him, and that's where the story really starts.
Yeah, because, up to that point, it was sort of a head-to-head between Edgar and Heathcliff, who's going to end up with Catherine, who has her heart, and truly who had her heart was always Heathcliff, but because of convention, because of tradition, she saw it more fit to marry someone like Edgar,
and
right?
It's hard to kind of not you can see why, because being a woman in that time, she really, this was her best choice, even though it wasn't her best choice, because Heathcliff always had her heart.
Yeah,
there was no question, but she had to do what any woman in that time had to do, and that was to survive.
Yeah, because her options were very limited. On the one hand, she had the love of her life, someone who she truly understood, and someone who truly understood her. And on the other hand, she had this person who she also got along with, which is Edgar, right? But he was also, he was inheriting thing like
the Grange.
The Grange. He was wealthy. He was respected. He was white. Like, let's not shy away from that fact.
Exactly.
The fact that also was the motivation behind her picking Edgar in the end, but I can also completely see how that would break a person apart. And the fact that Heathcliff survived that event, to me, I don't know if I'd be strong enough. So I have like sort of admiration for him here, because once Edgar and Kathy got engaged, Heathcliff left. Right? He left Wuthering Heights for years, I think. And I don't remember what he did, but when he came back, he had a lot of money, right? He was like filled to the brim, and it's, they don't actually tell you what he did, what kind of business he was into, but it had to like be something unsavory because it was so secretive. So like, there's no way he made that money honestly. He was probably also thinking here that he's out of options, he's a foreigner, I guess, in a land of wealthy white people. His options were limited as well, so I'm not surprised that Heathcliff's character turned to, I don't know, crime or, whatever it was that made him the money that he had. It's just really sad that he had to go through it like that.
Yeah, but at the same time, I do love this realistic part, because other books would be like, no matter what, I'm going to marry him and deal with the consequences later, and that's where books usually end. You're never shown consequences of that kind of marriage in that time, which would have probably been disastrous for them, for both of them. So I loved that the book didn't romanticize that part. Kathy had to marry Edgar, that was that, and she did it.
Yeah, because Kathy was, in the end stuck between a rock and a hard place, if you look at it from that perspective. What would you have done ask yourself, what would you have done in the same situation? You're a woman who has no wealth to her name because the only wealth she has is, whatever her father will give her as a dowry.
Which, did she even get a dowry?
I'm not sure because her father did die soon, right?
Hindley was then in charge of everything, and I'm not gonna waste words for him. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah. Hindley's a piece of shit.
Yeah.
That's all we can say. Okay, so Hindley, we have to explain a little bit here.
Okay.
Hindley inherited everything after their father's death, Cathy and Hindley's father. I'm pretty sure he died of an illness, right?
Yeah.
As did the mother. So he got Wuthering Heights, and he claimed that Heathcliff will never see a penny of it, right? He really just wanted to push Heathcliff out of the family as much as he could. Heathcliff was persistent, though. He knew how to survive. He really did. And we'll get to that. Okay, so this was an intermission. Now we're going back to, Cathy's choices, right? What would you have done, truly? You have no dowry, and a wealthy boy likes you. What are you gonna do?
You're going to marry that boy.
Yeah.
Because this is the best option for you to survive. And this is one of the only decision where I wasn't angry at her because I understood. But everything else was so manipulative, and she was just a brat.
Oh yeah, I mean, first of all, she was a brat. Second of all, she was so unhappy with her life and her choices because I think she realized that, she'd made the wrong choice as far as her heart goes, right? She truly did love Heathcliff, and she didn't miss him when he left. But she could also, she couldn't justify the bad things that he was doing, and this is the next point. Years later, Heathcliff comes back to Wuthering Heights with all this mysterious cash, right? And he starts, in retaliation, I guess, wooing Isabel, which is Edgar's sister. And he's the perfect man as long as, they're not married yet.
Yeah.
And Cathy tells Isabel that marrying Heathcliff is a mistake. But Isabel is, she just has heart eyes at this point. She's sees everything.
Young,
yeah.
She's naive.
Yeah.
She
just sees the world through rose-colored glasses, right? At this point, she's like, yes, but he truly loves me. He truly does. Surprise, surprise, he doesn't, right?
Yeah.
And he was literally just using her because through her, he now had access to the Grange, right?
And they do end up married.
Yeah. They end up married. Do they elope?
Yeah, they elope.
They elope against all better judgment, and it turns out miserable for Isabel. Heathcliff, of course. Heathcliff treats her like an animal. He has absolutely no respect for her. He is never kind. He never offers a kind word to her at all. She's more of a nuisance to him at this point because, he got what he wanted from her. And she, she also has a child with him, right? Linton. Yeah.
My God. Linton.
Okay, can we talk about the names? Okay. I have to mention here because, you have Hinton, you have Hindley, and then later on you also have Hareton, you have Cathy, and you have Cathy Jr.
Everyone, Linton or Cathy.
Yeah.
Jesus.
So Edgar and Isabel's last name is Linton, and Isabel has a son who she calls Linton. Right, so okay, the names are confusing, but basically, Isabel, I don't know if she has the baby and then escapes,
No,
or
she escapes when she's pregnant.
when she's pregnant.
Yeah.
Okay, so she runs away, I believe, to London, right? And there she has the baby, who she names Linton because she doesn't want him to be associated with Heathcliff.
Yeah.
In reality, she doesn't want the child to bear Heathcliff's name because she, hates Heathcliff, right? He screwed her over, like, mega, right?
Yeah.
So then, I think years later, Linton comes back.
Yeah.
Or Linton comes to Wuthering Heights.
Edgar, his uncle, so Kathy's husband and Kathy's father.
Oh yeah. Okay, let's mention here at some point Kathy had a daughter
And
whom
then she died.
Yeah, and then she died.
And she was named Kathy.
And she was named Kathy, the daughter, yes.
Yeah.
So we're gonna say Kathy and Catherine Jr. I think that's the best.
Junior and senior is
just the best,
way,
right? Okay.
Yeah.
So what happened in between was Kathy got pregnant, but she also got really sick. Like the fact
the
that
reason she got sick was, I think she threw a huge tantrum over Heathcliff and the whole situation, and just ended up dying. Which soon after she had baby Catherine.
Yeah, the thing is that the fact that what Heathcliff did, marrying Isabella and treating her poorly and all of that, and Kathy Sr. still believing that Heathcliff is the love of her life and is her soulmate, could not forgive what Heathcliff did, went into a sort of like, I don't know what I should call it, a panic attack, a shock, a hysteria, yeah. Raved about it and then was bedridden for a very long time, gave birth and died soon after.
Exactly, yeah.
But Edgar was, at this point I think we find out that Edgar was truly, truly in love with Kathy
and
Sr.
He is the only character throughout who I liked. He is the only one where I can say I like him from beginning to end. Even Kathy Jr., I liked her, but the way she behaved towards Hareton, which we'll get to a bit later, because it's basically the ending of the book.
Yeah.
It just, sometimes she was too much like Kathy Sr., which makes sense, she's her daughter, but Edgar is the only person I consistently liked throughout the book, because he was just a guy who fell in love with a girl, got married, she died, he got so sad, but he still loved his daughter immensely.
Oh yeah, that's why she was also named after Catherine Sr., of course. And he truly did love her, and I felt so bad when Catherine Sr. died, when he had that, I think he had a monologue or something, he was saying something there in the middle.
Sorry for my sniffing in the middle. Yeah.
But it was just, it broke my heart. It was so sad. I really felt for him. That was, one of the most humanizing aspects of the story as far as characters go. It truly made you see how much people who aren't as involved are still suffering, because the main story is still Heathcliff and Catherine Sr., right? That's the thing you focus on the most, and you kind of forget about the rest of the characters. And Edgar was truly one of those characters that suffered through everything, and still he stayed, still he endured.
That's why I admired him, because unlike Heathcliff, he did suffer. I mean, let's leave the skin color aside for a second. He did suffer, but he never ever went to those extremes.
Yeah, he suffered a lot. I'm sure that he knew to some extent that Catherine will never be completely his. He had to have known that she was in love with Heathcliff, and that she was never going to be as in love with him. So to have someone who you love unconditionally and watch them love that someone else in that same way, that has to be hard.
Exactly.
That has to be one of the worst things that we go through on an emotional level. So the fact that he was a broken man, before his death does not surprise me at all.
But he stayed consistently good.
Yeah.
And that's why I loved him. I loved him. Even though I mentioned this to you at the beginning, of course I was team Heathcliff.
Yeah.
But by the end, I was like, Edgar deserved so much better.
Yeah.
He deserved so much better than Cathy Sr. He deserved a much nicer child than Cathy Jr. He deserved not what happened to Isabella. He deserved so much more.
Oh yeah.
And I just feel sorry for him.
He was the quiet hero of the story. He, suffered through everything, and whatever life threw at him, he endured. And that's, no one should have to suffer as he did, especially not alone. And he's, a character that's just so admirable, I think. Just such a special person.
So yeah, then Isabella dies and Edgar has to go pick up Linton, who is a bit sickly, but he gets along very well with Catherine Jr., but Heathcliff claims him immediately, so he has to move from the Grange to the Heights, and that's where the drama starts.
Yeah, that's where things go wrong.
And I'm going to rip into Linton so much, because from the moment he enters the Heights, I'm not gonna say he's like his father. He is in so many ways so much worse, because he is every toxic, manipulative boyfriend ever.
He's a weasel.
Exactly.
He's a fucking weasel.
He's so horrible. He constantly uses his illness to emotionally manipulate Cathy Jr. Constantly. Every single time she's about, oh, I gotta go, you're treating me horribly. He falls over or says, oh, but I'm sick. Aren't you going to help me? Do you not love me enough to help me?
Don't you care about my sickly person? Oh no, I am suffering.
Oh no. So, last episode, you wished a poor woe is me, rescue me type character, but I don't think this is what you had in mind.
Oh, definitely not. Jesus Christ. Okay, Linton is this type of, oh god, he's very manipulative, like you said. He will use his position to gain power. He's basically his father, Yeah. And Isabel really tried to keep him as far from the likeness of his father as she could. For this exact reason, yes. And now he's back. He's here at the Heights, and
Lord.
He's just the worst. And I had a bit of sympathy for him at the beginning, because
I think we all did. And I think if he had stayed at the Grange, he would have probably been fine.
Because he was mistreated by Heathcliff, of course. He was a sickly kid, with a mother who died, who hated his father as well, right? That couldn't have been a good life. So you do have sympathy for him. But then he starts to evolve as a character. Then he starts to, show you who he is. And you realize he's, Heathcliff, but tenfold. He's so much worse.
So much worse. Where Heathcliff used his misfortune to rise, Linton used his misfortune to be coddled. And then the worst thing happens, where Heathcliff basically abducts Cathy Jr. and forces her to marry Linton because he is sickly. He needs to be married quickly so that Heathcliff gains possession of the Grange. And that just broke me. That moment when he kidnapped Cathy Jr. and forced her to marry this horrible man, it just broke me.
So at this point, I think it's good to mention, at this point, Heathcliff already had possession of the Wuthering Heights. And the way he got it is because Hindley was a drunkard that, got way too intoxicated every single day, blew through all his money, and in the end had to beg on his knees for Heathcliff, whom he, wanted to hurt and to push out of the family, for Heathcliff to lend him money. And at that point, Heathcliff made Hindley sign over Wuthering Heights to him. So now he already had Wuthering Heights, and when he abducted Cathy and made her marry Linton, he had possession of the Grange as well, because
it was her dowry, basically. She was the only heir, and once her father, who was by that point, I think, also sickly, he dies shortly after the wedding, and then that's where Heathcliff basically gets everything he's ever wanted. He has won. The villain has won.
He has control over absolutely everything. So, Hareton.
Yeah.
He's
Hindley's son.
He's Hindley's son.
We left this out on purpose because Hareton doesn't play a big role until the very, very end. But basically, Hindley, in between when Cathy and Heathcliff were still kids, gets married, but his wife, even though she's cheerful in the beginning, also falls ill and dies shortly after pregnancy, and has Hareton, who Hindley absolutely hates. At some point, he's even contemplating dropping him down from the second floor, like he was holding him over the banister. So, and Hareton's just been there growing up for most of the story. He's, I think, around 5 to 8 years older than Cathy Jr., somewhere in that age range, I think.
Yeah, he's somewhere in the middle between the first and second generation of Cathys.
Yeah. Throughout the story, he's just there. But it turns out that he is Cathy Jr.'s somewhat only solace in those moments where she is still wife to Linton and lives at the Heights. But she's horrible to him. He doesn't know how to read, and he's like, look, I tried to read, look what I can read, and she's just like, oh my god, your reading is horrible, don't you know that's not how you read? And something like that. I felt so sorry for him, even though he was, throughout the story, just another bratty child who swore a lot.
Yeah, but the reason that Hareton was not, educated as well is because, his father hated him. And after his father's death, Heathcliff also, mistreated him, did not care for him. So he was left to his own devices, and he was a wild child. He, never learned, to be calm. He never learned how to read. He never learned how to be respectful. But upon, growing up, he started trying. He started realizing that this is not the way to live. And he really tried. And at this point, Cathy Jr. did really treat him poorly and was incredibly mean to his efforts, which is never appreciated.
Yeah, I mean, if someone tries, at least say, okay, I see that you're trying, but maybe, this is where you can improve. So, constructive criticism.
Yeah, instead of her trying to help him, she kind of put him down instead, which I didn't understand because I thought, okay, Cathy Jr. has such a, good opportunity for a redemption here, or for, capturing people's hearts.
Does get it at the end?
She does, but, she could have started here, right? Although I'm not sure, because I haven't read the book in years now, if I didn't interpret her meanness to him about his reading as more of a sarcastic sort of joking. I'm not sure.
No, I mean, it could be an interpretational issue. I always thought that she didn't much care about Hareton at all, so I think it was mean. That's how I read it. But if you interpreted it in a different way, it's fine.
I honestly don't remember how I did. I think I was mad at her at the point, so I guess I interpreted it the same way you did, but I have this strange feeling that I might have interpreted it as an endearing sort of, you don't know how to read, you poor thing, right?
I think, maybe. I mean, it's completely... Let us know down in the comments.
Yeah,
what do you think?
Yeah, if you've read the book or if you're planning to read on it, what? Planning on reading it? Come back to this video, this podcast, and comment your thoughts on what you think the situation was.
Okay, so at this point, we find Lockwood in this situation with Linton is dead, and in the house are Heathcliff, Cathy, and Hareton, and Joseph, who doesn't really matter. But
is he the caretaker? Or,
I couldn't understand what he was saying most of the time, so it doesn't matter. We'll leave him aside.
It really doesn't.
Yeah, and then Lockwood decides to leave, and he comes back, I think, a year later. I think sometime later, to find a very happy scene, and this is the good ending that I was surprised we got at that point. But what happens is Heathcliff is dead, Nellie is back at the Heights, and Cathy and Hareton have decided to marry and are living a very happy life where Catherine Jr. is actually helping him to read. So it's really wholesome.
Yeah, it's a very good scene at the end. So the way Heathcliff died, I think, is, because it's not explicitly written, I think he went insane from all the guilt. He kept, it was written, I think, in more than one point that he had visions of Catherine Sr.
Yeah.
I think he was sort of going insane from, all the things that he wished would happen, all the things that never were, all the things he felt guilty for never saying to her, for doing to her family, for doing to her daughter. He just felt, I think, insanely guilty and probably wanted to repent. So in the end, he kind of went, berserk. He just gave up, basically.
I think this is where the quote from Howl's Moving Castle, if you know that movie, comes into play. A heart is a heavy burden. And I think that's what got to him in the end. But he did request being buried next to Catherine. I think he had some horrendous plan that I didn't even want to believe actually came true about some necrophilic shit.
Oh my god.
Yeah, but he also found peace in the end, in death, because he would get to see Kathy Senior again. So.
Yeah, he believed he could truly return to her and for them to finally be happy together, you know, with no obstacles in between them. Although that's all up to interpretation because it's not explicitly written and because, you know, we don't actually know what happens to people after death. And the way Heathcliff lived, I kind of doubt that he got to go to a good place in the end, you know.
I mean, neither did Kathy.
Neither did Kathy, yeah. So maybe they're suffering together now.
Okay, so I think we've come to the end, to the surprisingly wholesome conclusion to what was Wuthering Heights. And my closing thoughts on this would be, it's a journey. It's a very realistic, emotional, raw journey that leaves a special sort of impact on you.
Oh yeah, and that's why the book is in my top 10 because it's so it's so realistic. This might as well have been a story written about a family she knew. You know, this could have been real people at some point, and I'm almost certain that when people were reading it, they saw themselves in these characters, which people can still see themselves in now.
And that's the amazing thing about it. It transcends time. Like, racism, still a thing. Rich versus poor, still a thing. Having to marry rich because you don't have better prospects, even if it's not the person you love, still relevant. It's
a timeless story, it's a timeless book, and I think if you read a single book in your life, this one's probably a good choice.
Yeah, but again, keep in mind, these people are horrible.
Yeah.
You are not going to like them, but that's the point.
Yeah, this is not a book full of comfort characters. These are, real people that you truly hate. And
I do realize that we've been recommending this book despite having discussed it beginning to end completely not spoiler free.
Yeah.
So I mean,
but it's a truly different experience when you actually read it versus what we were saying here, because the conversations are so much deeper. It's beautifully written. If you're gonna read it for anything, the language aspect of it is also a good reason to pick it up. It's just an all-around good book, and even though we sort of explained the plot, you still don't know when anything is coming or what's gonna happen. And there's so many nuances, so many other aspects to the book that it's truly just worth picking up.
And if you're a high school student or college student, I hope we helped you write your essay. We are aware. I've been there. We've all been there. So I hope that this was also helpful for you.
Yeah. So,
I think we can sufficiently end this here.
Probably, yeah, okay. I mean, I think we've exhausted the topic at this point.
Yes.
So I think it's time to close up the library. We'll be open again next month. You can find our social media in the description below as well as on the screen.
Not probably.
Oh.
It
Okay.
takes me too much time to edit it on the screen.
Okay, then you can find our social media in the description below. Like this video, subscribe for more episodes of the library.
Comment your thoughts on the book down below.
Yeah.
We're always happy to hear from you and see your perspective on the book.
And that's it, I guess.
We have been the nerd
And the tourist.
and we're wishing you a pleasant, transition into summer.
Yeah, stay safe, stay healthy.
Stay healthy, and we'll see you next month.
Best and take care.
Bye.
Bye.